Yeah, catalog would be one. Here we are in ninth grade, and we're talking about question number 2 on the review sheet, the elements, characteristics, and devices of epic poetry. And we just mentioned the elements of that definition: long narrative poem, a larger-than-life character, someone elevated or high rank is the hero, vast settings, and he represents a nation. And John Carter just mentioned that, what was that again? Catalogs. Catalogs is a device that these writers like to use. In Medeus Ray is a device that they like to use. They like to include supernatural things. So when we're talking about characteristics and devices, they kind of blend together. But the first 5 things I mentioned are essential. These other things, like usually there's a muse. Well, none of the stories we've read so far is there a muse. You know, that's a typical device used by epic poets, that they appeal to a muse. Like, inspire me. It's almost like a prayer. Inspire me to write this story. Well, we don't get that in the books. None of the books we read this year do we get that. So it's not essential, but it's a characteristic. Yes.
Oh wait, can I ask you about another question?
Well, let's finish this one. All right. So, and there are other things that just don't pop into my head right now, but those are the kinds of things. And then, what specifically you would need to do is show how those things can be found in Beowulf and Song of Roland. So like I mentioned, Beowulf doesn't have, it has catalogs, but not as much as Song of Roland. Now, Song of Roland has catalogs, lots of lists in Roland. They certainly have larger-than-life characters, and give an example of that, how they're larger than life. The vast settings, give an example of that. We've done this like 2 or 3 times already. Hopefully when you leave ninth grade, I know what an epic, because you won't read it, well, you'll read one next year. You read Paradise Lost in Dr. Bedsel's class, which is another epic poem. But that's the last one you'll probably ever read in your life. So anyway, those are some of the things that you would, the key thing is finding the elements and characteristics that are in Beowulf and Song of Roland. Does that help you?
Yeah, it does, thank you.
And I'm always looking for, and I know Dr. Talbot would be too, specifics. We're all about specifics. Show, don't tell. You know, the best kind of writing, the best kind of argument is a mixture of telling, but also showing. Showing is more important than telling. So don't tell me what it is, show me what it is by giving me a specific example of it. I always can get it if you give me the example. All right. Remember, you have to talk for 2.5 minutes. And what we'll do tomorrow is we'll do what you did the other day in Dr. Talbert's class. We'll practice one. Any others that are just begging, you to, John Carter.
Number 9. Like, what are you saying?
Yeah, I forget. Was it someone in here that showed me their list?
Oh, is it like Charlemagne's real age versus his, like...
Yeah, but somebody showed me a list that they had made. Was it in here? I can't remember, but it was, she had front and back. I think it was...
Grace question?
What'd you say?
Anna Grace question?
Well, we know hers are great, but this wasn't.
Excellent, compilation list.
Yeah.
That's the only reason
What she did is on a sheet of paper, she put, she put facts and history, and then like in one column, and the other column she put the books, like every one of the books, the 3 books, and so she would fill in that blank, and it was really helpful. What the question means is, some of these stories are based on facts, and some are not. Some have a little bit of facts and mostly fiction. Some have mostly fiction and few facts. So you would need to explain, and the point of this question is, I love literature because I love stories, but I don't care if the story is a factual story or a made-up story. I love it, but there is a difference. If it's a factual story, that means everything the writer is saying is true, and none of the books that we read is that the case, that everything is true. And so there's a mixture of fact and fiction, and you need to show me that. So what's factual, what's fictitious in Beowulf? Yeah.
So it's mostly fictional.
Yes.
You emotions and stuff, especially that the monsters represent. So it's more representing like things that we may go through and like emotions that we may feel rather than like actual
Yeah.
historical
And-
facts.
and why
But
did
it
you s-
also is a good representation of like culture at the time.
Yeah.
Because it has like
Good.
themes of gift giving and like,
So those things are true.
right, and
But-
major themes that would have been common in the Middle Ages.
But when we think of factual, we're thinking about a specific event with the real names are there and this really happened, what we normally consider history. And so, but it could still be true and not be factual. Even Jesus told parables. And a parable by definition is not factual, it's an illustration of something that is true. Why did you say obviously Beowulf is not? Why is it obvious that they're not factual?
Well, because, I mean, there are lots of things that point to it, but it's, I mean, the main thing being that it's, you know, he's fighting fictional beasts.
Yes, good.
And he's, like, it, just ordinarily it wouldn't happen, you know?
Good.
Like, he kind of marched in, he
Mhm.
took the reins and destroyed.
Too much hyperbole.
Yeah, too much hyperbole.
And when you got monsters, when you have dragons and grindles, yeah, we're talking about fantasy here. We're not talking about actual facts. But as you mentioned, did you hear what he said? He mentioned that the emotions, that there are truths there about greed, there are truths there about revenge and justice. So those things are true, but they're not, you know, the particular events aren't factual.
So there's no actual facts in Beowulf?
No. They're really Swedes. They're real people. There's Denmark. That's a real place. There's Germany. That's a real place. They're Franks. They mention these people. So those things are factual in the sense there really are Swedes and there's no Middle Earth. So the Hobbit, that's certainly not. There's nothing factual in that book, but there's still truths in that book. So that's a sophisticated distinction between. And you know, you can give facts without giving truth. You ever thought of that? It was not to change the subject, but you could give a fact without giving a truth.
Half truths.
Good. Yeah. If you told half of it is true, but the other half is not true. I'm trying to think of an example, but you know, you could take a fact and take it out of context and make it look like. It's like she showed us yesterday about, you know, the videos and you know how people on YouTube and whatever you use, they create a picture that's not real. You know, they do something, they enhance it or do something to it that it's distorted. That's what people do. They take what is a fact, but now it becomes an untruth, a lie, because they've changed it. And don't forget, which of those stories is more factual than the others?
Probably Song of Wolf. Wait, you mean out of which ones?
Out of those three books that we read.
Cathedral.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah.
probably. Yeah, it's based on a real event. And
That's
we
right.
don't know like what all of them were thinking at the time, so it's
Yeah.
kind of like, you know, made into a good story.
Right.
But it's mostly fact-based.
Right, plus the temptations, those are figurative, they're not real. A temptation isn't a person. They could be a temptation, but not the temptation, you know, in the same way. It's, anyway, and then of course, Song of Roland, we know that there's a set of facts that have been distorted, but there are some facts in Song of Roland. So you would make that distinction. Tomorrow, or that is Tuesday, I think part of the problem, you have 10 minutes, but you're gonna study 10 topics. You're only gonna get one of them, and you don't know in advance what it's gonna be, whether it's my question or his. So you have to think quickly, okay, what am I gonna say? Let me pull it up in my brain, kind of Google it in my head, and figure out, okay, what do I need to say about Song of Roland? And then it takes a minute to process that, and of course, write it down. Yeah.
We're gonna get two.
What?
I thought we were gonna get two for,
Two, yeah, but you're only gonna write on one.
Oh, we're gonna write about one?
Right.
Choose from the best.
You choose
Oh,
from the
one
two.
Alright.
Yeah.
So wait, can I ask about new?
Hang on to that, just make sure we're finished. Anything else about this particular one?
So when it comes to number
So like you said, the church and state in the Middle Ages. Do you
Okay.
mean like real life or like in the cathedral?
In real life, probably.
In real life,
Because
and,
they
and
became
anything
close,
about this
right?
question, if we can put this away,
Isn't it like they became close, or is it that they became closer, or is it that the church is above state?
well, we're jumping ahead of your question, whatever that was. I didn't mean to do that, I was trying not to do that. But since we brought us to number 8,
Oh, is it that what she was asking?
yeah, she is, but,
Oh.
Andrew had a question. But look at
Oh,
number
I'm
8,
sorry.
the relationship of church and state in the Middle Ages. Discuss that tension. That would be just the tension between Henry and Thomas, and what Thomas was trying to do and what Henry was trying to do. I wish we'd had time to talk more about it. I always think it's interesting that we are literally in walking distance from a school that is not a Christian school, and that is Kernodle. And the difference is, same human beings, they're Christians down there. I'm sure they're certainly Christians here. But the difference between those two worlds, a Christian school and some people like to call them government schools, public schools, are vast. And that's the same issue Thomas and Henry talked about. Like, who's going to be in charge of the church? Is it going to be the government? And Thomas argued, no, it's not. We're going to separate ourselves. Did you know your church is not taxed in America? Your church doesn't have to pay property taxes, I don't think.
Wow.
Your church has there's a exemption because it is a church from having to pay taxes to the government. Now, your church is not a profit-making organization. That's not the purpose of it. But I'm glad that's the case, because all the money that comes into your church, you can use for the kingdom. You don't have to give some of it to the government. So I'm kind of glad that we can exist and do this. I couldn't do this, and you couldn't do this at Kernodle.
Like,
Um,
is that
Can you
when
give-
this school
We
also
definitely could write a
accepts
chapter paper.
submissions?
What's that?
Is that what this school
Just, you could
also
write a chapter
accepts
paper.
submissions?
That is a great question. We're not a church, so that is a great question, Flora. I don't know the relationship. We don't take government money. We don't take taxes. You know, your parents are paying money. I'm paying
But
money.
we're also not
that
like
go
a
to public-
nonprofit organization.
No, no school. Yeah, no school is. But anyway, that's a great question. Yeah. Well,
Can you give
is
one
this a
ex-
different question?
No, it's
Okay.
on the same one,
Okay.
but can you give one example of how they're different,
How what?
the church and state?
Okay, remember that the state in the Middle Ages, because the focus is on the Middle Ages, there were 3 things we learned. They wanted to have courts that were superior to the church courts. He wanted to have everything under the auspices or control of the government. And he wanted to be able to tax the churches. So he wanted to, it's always simpler. You know, if we lived in a dictatorship, life would be so much simpler. We'd all be driving the same car. We'd all be wearing the same uniform. We'd all be, poor, but still we'd all be the same, right? It's the kind of the vision of communism. But it's real simple. Nobody has to debate anything. The head guy decides we're all going to wear purple, and nobody disagrees because you have to wear purple. So you don't have to think about it. You get up in the morning, you put on your purple. So it's easier to live in a dictatorship than it is a democracy or free, because then we argue. But we have the freedom to argue and to debate. What I'm getting at is, even Henry, it's simpler if everything is centralized. If we have this entity called the church over here, they're doing their own court. They're not paying taxes to me. I got to fight the French again, and they're not giving me any money. Those are kinds of things Henry wanted to do, and Thomas said the church is sacred. We don't know, the government doesn't tell us what to do. That's sort of the general idea of number 8, of the relationship of the church. And just go into detail as to what happened. We got to get back to Andrew because I put you off.
Yeah, so number 7, I think I know like how like revenge plays in like all the books, but like how does justice like
Yeah, I wish we could have spent more time on that. So let's go to justice. See, I think it's interesting to decide, well, first of all, be able to define the difference. Do you remember the difference?
Ooh.
Yeah.
I remember in Beowulf we talked like about a specific example where like Beowulf killing Grendel's mother was justice because he was doing it like not for like selfish reasons or for like a personal vendetta against her, but to protect the people that she was attacking. And then Grendel's mom attacked the second handmaid to the king, I forget his name, because she had a personal vendetta against Beowulf and she meant to attack him because he killed her son.
And does it say it here? Yeah, it doesn't say it here, but I'm going to ask you to look at Scripture. Because we looked at Scripture, we define justice. Justice means what's right. Now, that's pretty broad, but that's what it says, to do what's right. Just and right, just, the word just, and the word right, R-I-G-H-T, mean the same thing, basically. Righteousness and justice mean the same thing. And so the major difference in Scripture is that we're required to do justice. You're required. It's not an option. You're prohibited or prevented. You cannot perform revenge. That's the big difference that Scripture points out. And in the books, I liked your example. I like Mariah's example because we said that what do we say about revenge? It's personal. It hurts other people. Remember, she didn't even kill Beowulf. She killed some innocent guy. That's what happens when you start. This guy's been hurt at work. What is he? He goes back to work and he shoots everybody. He doesn't just shoot the person that insulted him. He just starts shooting and innocent people get killed. That's the problem with revenge. So those are the kinds of things that happen badly, the personal part of it, and it hurts other people. And of course it doesn't end. Like you get me, I got to get you, you get me. It just never, it goes back and forth. Justice is always right. It's always objective. I'm going to weigh, did you do it or not? Let me give you the evidence. If you did it, then you get punished. I'll weigh the evidence. If you didn't do it, you're free to go. And justice is always like that. And we're required to be just, which means, remember what we say, what four groups of people in the Old Testament seem to always emphasize as to the groups that we need to take care of, to be just, particularly in the area of justice.
It's like widows or like fatherless or something like that.
That's two different groups, good. The widows and the orphans.
I don't know the other one.
The stranger. The group or the people in your environment who are not native born. The people that, like Ruth in the old book of Ruth, she was a Moabite. She came over and treat her with justice. You have to be just. And it's required of us. So think about the three books. What was justice?
With the widow, the stranger, and the orphan?
The orphan, yes. The widow, stranger, the orphan, and the poor. And those are just general categories. You can't say somebody, even rich people deserve justice. You can't, he's rich, he doesn't, we don't have to treat him with justice. No, it's just that these four groups of people, they always get mistreated, and we've got to particularly treat them. Yeah.
So like, Ryan gave like good examples of like how it is in Beowulf, but like in like Murder in Cathedral. So would revenge be like the king sending over the knights to go kill Thomas, like as a personal vendetta against him?
You could certainly make that case.
I thought it could be played as when they killed him. It could be.
I'm sorry,
I
who?
thought it could be done as both revenge and justice based on how you think about it.
You're right. There's some cases that you have to just make an argument, and it's not really clear. Like you mentioned, I like your Mariah mentioned Grendel's mother. I think you're right. I think that was not revenge. I think you had to get rid of this woman, or she'd do it again. Or Grendel, you had to get rid of him, and he'd keep hurting people. He didn't even know Grendel. He'd never met either one of these people. It wasn't personal. His guy didn't get killed. Beowulf's guy, it was Hrothgar's guy that got killed. So it wasn't personal. So I think you could argue that made that just. So that's the kind of thing you could talk about when you did this. We have about 15 minutes. Are there any others? I want to give you some time to work together, but again, we got to use our time wisely. Yeah.
I just had a question about a name. I was trying to figure out the guy that gets revenge on Roland for sending him into that. You're really like in the beginning of the book. Roland.
Oh, yeah.
And then that's the
It starts with a
what's
C.
his name again?
You mean Ganelon?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great example of revenge, because that's his only motive.
Yeah.
That he likes Charlemagne. He's not trying to hurt Charlemagne. It's one guy that he. But going back to Mariah's point, when he got revenge against Roland, who also did he hurt?
His friend.
20,000 of Roland's friends were killed because of his seeking revenge against one guy, and that's why revenge is so bad.
Wait, so then would the king of Roland or Roland's friend then searching for Ganelon and killing him, would that be justice?
Well, you could make an argument it was either way, but I think definitely he does. I was reading it this morning, Book of Genesis, chapter 10, I think it is. After the flood, God says, if you kill somebody, you must be killed. You know, it's like that's the first time that idea of capital punishment enters into Scripture, into the world, is that is like the worst, almost the worst thing you can do, is kill somebody. I don't think we have any other crime that maybe treason, but murder is like the worst, right? Don't most people think that? What more can you do to somebody other than kill them?
Mass murder.
Yeah, the more people you kill. But the Lord in that section of Genesis allows, it's so bad that you have to pay with your blood. If you kill somebody, murder them, then you have to pay back. So that's pretty bad. All right, yeah.
In Song of Roland, what is an example of pride? Oh wait, no, I know. I'm sorry. My question is, I know he blows on the horn.
Or doesn't.
Right.
Or he does.
He only blows on the horn when what happens is my question.
Like
It's like
after 3
after-
times, then like
yeah.
he realizes, oh, we need to do this.
So only when it's too late.
Yes.
Okay. And then in Murder in the Cathedral, what is an example of pride?
Now I'm going to let you think about that just a second.
Wait, which
Well,
one
I
is
know
it?
that, like, okay, I'm thinking about when, like, the knights came to kill him, and he's, like, back there with the, priests, and they're trying to hide him, and he's like, no, you know, like.
But think about earlier when the 4 temptations
Tell us
came.
all that he wants, right?
What?
Like, tell us about like all that he wants.
Well, and like dying for, like.
Dying for the wrong reason.
Right, yes. That's the ultimate, for him, it was the ultimate form of pride, is that he wanted to die so they could build a tomb and people could come and worship him, so to speak. All right, yeah. Yeah, Alex.
What would be, like, what, for number 10, for the hero's bravery and chivalry, for chivalry, what is an example of that in Murder in the Cathedral? So I was
Think
confused.
about, like,
Because the knights weren't
specifically
chivalrous.
probably in the first 2, I would say.
But I like what Andrew just said, the knights weren't chivalrous. That's a way to discuss chivalry, is to discuss what it isn't. And those guys were the opposite of chivalry. 4 guys against 1.
Yeah, I wasn't there.
It wasn't,
Yeah.
I'm
it
sure
wasn't
they
even
have
armed and all
swords or
this.
something.
Yeah. What'd you say?
He wasn't armed. So
He was unarmed and he was a man of faith. I mean, everything was unchivalrous. And remember in Beowulf, the opposite of that is he wanted to fight Grendel on Grendel's terms, not his own. So he said, I'm not taking any weapon because Grendel doesn't use a weapon. And so that's real chivalry, is when you want this fight to be honest and fair, and you don't want to take an advantage. Like, what were the Muslims accused of doing? Like stabbing you in the back, or hiding and pretending, and then trying to attack you. Those things would not be considered chivalrous, because you and I stand up face to face. That's chivalry. You and me face to face, equal, fair fight, is what they would call chivalry. That's part of this. And remember, Beowulf was appointed, not Beowulf, but Roland was appointed to be the head of the rear guard by Ganelon. Because of chivalry, he said, oh yes, I'll be glad to do it. I'm happy to do it. I'm honored to do it. That's what he said publicly, because that's chivalry. But then he turned around and whispered to him, I'm gonna get you for this, I can't remember his exact words. But,
They did that out of pride.
yeah, and that's part of chivalry, is that glory, that if you wanna get it the right way, yes, Paul.
What was the time period chivalry started declining?
That is a great question. Dr. Talbert,
The what?
does he talk about that? Did he talk about chivalry?
Yeah, we talked about it, but
Sorry.
we talked about like the stuff.
When did
like,
chivalry
it
not-
He said, when did it start to go out of style
Oh,
to be
decline,
chivalry?
is that what you said? Okay, I remember that.
Frankly, I think that it's connected with the existence of the church in the Middle Ages. You were doing this for the glory of God, and that sort of, then after your faith began to wane, the idea was, I just do it any way I can get it. If I have to stab you in the back, I'll stab you in the back. It doesn't matter how I do it, I just gotta get rid of you. Yeah.
So on number 5, the role of the role of women in the Middle Ages in Beowulf, like they were like queens and stuff, right?
I thought it was because they were like their marriage, they were married and they were just like.
Yeah, all of them, it was like the kind of vengeful bad lady.
Yeah. I mean, okay.
I cannot think, I think I've made a mistake here for that question. I don't see that at all in Murder in the Cathedral. I think I meant Song of Roland, and there's not much of it there.
But like Murder in the Cathedral, like the chorus,
Oh,
like,
yeah,
that could
like
be the
the
role of
represent the
women.
core.
Oh, yeah, that's what I put.
Okay.
The 4 women of
But like,
Canterbury.
I don't see how marriage.
No, that's a good, I'm glad you mentioned that. The only woman in Song of Roland is Oude, A-U-D-E, remember?
She's a minor character.
And she is, and that's the only, Bramamon. Yeah, Bramamon. And so they're very obedient, they're very,
Oh, wow.
they're very faithful, loyal. That would be part of that
That's a
too.
Beowulf. Wait, okay, so Oud, how do you spell it?
A-U-D-E, like the car, but pronounced.
I like Audie, but it's like.
Audie, yeah.
So wait, who is she again? Is she the one?
She's the girlfriend, like also Oliver's sister.
What is Jerusalem?
And does she have any, does she even have any speaking lines?
We talking about Bramamon?
Food.
Oh, no, but she just dies, remember? She just dies when she finds out.
Oh, yeah.
That's
the
how
little
faithful
guy.
she is. She just, her husband to be, so I'll die, I'll go with
Also,
her. All right, one more question here, yeah.
So at number 3, the role of God and supernatural, in like all the books, like in Beowulf, like he's super strong, right? He's not just a regular guy, is he?
Beowulf, right.
Yeah.
So that's not, remember, what does God do for Beowulf? He protects him. He's sort of naturally strong. But when he's down underwater and Grendel's mother is trying to stab him with the sword,
He like.
that chainmail, it's almost like it's charmed. Now, if you were writing in The Hobbit, it would be charmed. But if you're a believer, you would say God uses that to protect Beowulf, which is what he does. And remember, even Hrothgar said, God brought you here. So there was this constant, this is a big question. I can't remember, honestly, but I hope I put it on the test, the written part. It definitely is on the oral part, but I hope I do, because that's such a big part of the Middle Ages, is the role of God and how they see God, as opposed to today, where, there's a winnowing going on. I mean, God's sifting people and saying, okay, who are the real believers, who are not? And not everybody's saved, not everybody. So I think that's what's happening here. But in the Middle Ages, almost everybody eventually became a believer. It wasn't all real either. There were a lot of phonies. Any of you 3? How about Paul?
Are we gonna have to know the dates for the oral or our
No, no.
class?
If you want to throw some dates in there and they happen to be right, I'd be impressed, but you don't have to remember them. Yeah.
Is it more, like, this kind of goes along with Laura's question, but is the term more kind of like this, where it's like
Yeah.
your general understanding of it, or is
Yeah.
it more, okay, so
No,
not like facts from each
Exactly.
book, like.
It is
little-
very general. In fact, like, notice I'm putting 3 books together. How, in 2 minutes? That's a lot of things to say. Hopefully that's your problem. Gee, I I have to get it in just 2 minutes or 3 minutes. It's not just 2 minutes. You can go to 5 minutes, but hope you don't. But if you have 5 minutes to say,
Is the final gonna be the same, like general
Yes.
understanding?
yes.
No, I meant I meant the written part, not
Yeah.
the I know the orals is like your understanding.
Yeah,
of-
but the written is, I'm taking these same categories and just, in fact, it's the questions you see
Oh,
Tuesday.
the orals and the written.
I'll probably
part.
include those same questions, not all of them, I can't put 14 of them on there, but I'll use the same questions on the exam, on the written part, yeah.
So then, like, same question on number 3, like, then, in the Song of Roland, like, I just wanna, like, confirm, like, he's got, like, the sword from heaven, and, like, and then when Roland dies, the angels come and pick him up, and he goes to heaven.
Yeah, in Song of Roland, the discussion of God seems more superficial, doesn't it? It's just, God is just giving you things, and God is protecting you. In Beowulf, seems to me a deeper understanding of the sovereignty of God, how God operates and controls all things, ultimately. But in Roland, he's just, I'm giving you a sword, I'll protect you here, I'll bring an angel, I'll put a dream. It's more sensational.
It seems kinda like realistic to what we want, right, though?
Yes, you mean in Roland? That's what we want God to do. He wants to be our divine avenger, he comes down when we need him, instead of we belong to him, not the other way around. We serve him.
And then, like, God was, like a big part in the murder of the cathedral.
Yes, in the form of the church. It's like the church is the representation of God on earth now, and so that's what Thomas is doing, is defending the church. And the issue is the church. Is the government going to control the church, or is the church going to let God, control his?
Yeah.
So yeah, there are 3 really different views. I'd love to hear your response to that.
But what is supernatural in Mirror of the Cathedral? Is that like the temptations and stuff?
You could say that. I didn't think of it that way, but yeah, if you wanted to see the supernatural, somebody mentioned, is it in here?
Oh, yeah,
They-
yes.
Yeah, I thought that was
Sounds
interesting.
like they would seem like supernatural things.
Like,
Right, but
they-
then we
Well, like
said.
demons.
Yeah, that they were demons. They really are, but they didn't appear that way.
We said that they were like, kind of the idea, like our temptations that are really like, obviously abstract, but really real, but like incarnated and very
Yes.
physical, like,
That's a great word to use. The temptations are given a body, which is what you mean by incarnation. They're given a physical body, and that's how they should come across. So we kind of skipped around. What I'd like to do tomorrow is give you some practice, less of me and more of you, and then that leaves Monday for, we can still answer these questions, talk about it. Remember, just make sure you check the schedule. I think Dr. Calvert has it on his website. I meant to put it on mine. I will, but it's not on there yet.